All right, this week we're working in Module 4 still, and we're gonna wrap Module 4 up. And even though there's a lot more activities to do there than we're actually going to cover, this is all we're going to spend on it. So if you get yourselves logged into the 4.3 selection structures there, this is going to be a pretty good introduction to Python and talking about the code that's in there. You notice that they've got the AP pseudocode on the right there. Don't focus so much on that. Just kind of try to focus as much you can on the Python, because if you take a look at their examples that they have here, of which there are a lot, it's really going to help you with the code that you'll be working on once you start doing the activities. If you just skip these particular video exercises and you don't take a peek at these PDF lessons that are set up and structured here for you, if you don't go through these, you're going to really struggle with the work in Python, because it's not, I don't want to say it's not easy, but it's not obvious, I think is the best word I'm looking for. So you'll notice when they've got an if statement here, they've got a tab, or they've tabbed over and there's an indentation there. You have to have that in Python. If it doesn't see those, it gets confused and it will not run right. So make sure you pay attention to those, because it's just not, if you did if grade is greater than 89 colon, and then you just pressed return, then and not have that space there, then that code's not going to run. So you have to actually hit the tab key, tab it over, and then type in the parenthesis, quote, you got an A, period, end quote, close parenthesis, for this to function. Otherwise, yeah, it's not going to work for you. When you do nested if statements, they do them a little different than probably what you think they might be. And some programs do what's called an else if. But with Python, it does what's called an elif. I call it an elif just so it reminds me that it's an else statement. So here are some statements here. So if you take a look at this, and how this specifically would read is if your grade is greater than an 89, and if you're a big math guy or girl, you might think, okay, well, that's a 90. You got an A. So anything over a 90 is an A. Anything over an 80 is a B. That's how this reads. Okay, because these are greater than. So these are if statements here. There's a last one that's just an else statement, because if you don't meet any of these conditions, then you get an F. So if none of these conditions are met, then it's going to do this else statement that shows up right here. So that's how that reads. When you take a look at logical operators, this is when you're putting things together. This is and, or, and not. And unfortunately, I don't think they show, there's an example. So they show you an example of what the not looks like down here. So when you see an exclamation point, that's not. So it's probably different than what you would expect to see. The way this reads is x is greater than 0, x is less than or equal to. And when you see two equal signs together, you gotta be careful, because that means equals. Okay, if you just see x is being assigned to something, that's totally different. With computer science, and this is with Java, this is with, I believe C++ works the same way too. Anytime you want to have an actual equals, you're going to see it, two of them together, not just one. Just one of them is the assignment operator, and that does something totally different. So then we have x is greater than or equal to 0. If you take a math class, you probably were expecting to see a line underneath that greater than sign, but this is not math class, this is computer science. And if you took a look on your keyboard, you wouldn't find a symbol there that has a greater than and then a line underneath it. It's not on the keyboard. So in that case, you do a greater than and then an equal sign right next to it. And that's how you get that same result. So x is less than or equal to 0, x is not equal to 0. Okay, so that's how each one of these reads. So go through this kind of slow. There are some modules that are built into Python, specifically math. So it's already been taught how to do certain things. So when you say ceil there, that's like the highest number that you can have. Floor is the lowest number that you can have there. Pow would be if you have the power of something. Skirt, so I like to say it, really stands for square root. Cosine, sine, tangent. So all that math has already been built into Python. So if you're trying to calculate something, you don't have to necessarily know what that formula is. It's already built into the application, which makes life a lot easier for you. It's the same thing with randoms. It can pull a random integer, and that's what randint is. It can pull anything random that you put inside those parentheses. So it could be a name, it could be whatever. It could be a picture. Same thing with uniform and range. So there might be a range of like 1 to 100, 1 to 1,000,000, 1 to 1,000. And if you're doing games especially, this is where those randoms get used. Okay, if you're making a slot machine game, you're going to tell the computer dual random. So every time the person pulls the slot, it's going to come up with a random result. It's not going to actually, and that's one of the things about gambling, is when you show up in Las Vegas and you walk up to a particular slot machine, do you know that it's really that random, or is it more often not going to hit, or is it more often going to hit? You don't know that, so it's coming up as a random. So the computer decides what that number is going, what the random result is going to be. And if you spent any time in Vegas, you might notice you'll go by a machine that has a big cover over it that's not being used. That's one of those machines that's paid out a little too much money. You might think like, oh, this one's down for repair. Oh no. After someone hits it 2 or 3 times, then they put a cover on it because they don't want a machine giving away too much money. Otherwise, a casino goes out of business. So that's part of the business model. All right, exercise A, evaluate a Boolean expression. Okay, these Boolean expressions are just true, false. So don't ever get paranoid or freaked out. The Boolean expression, what in the world is that? It's just a true, false statement. So in this question right here, it says, for example, X is assigned to 12, Y is assigned to 15. Okay, it's not equal to, it's being assigned to. So make sure and keep that in mind. So when you take a look at this X greater than Y, is that true or false? We got 12 greater than 15. No, that's false for that one. But the next one, Y greater than X, yes, that one is true. So the first answer is false, second one's true. The next one's a little more complicated. This one says X is greater than 10. Okay, so let's evaluate that first. Is X greater than 10? Yeah, it's 12, so yeah, that works. And Y is less than 20. Y is 15, which is less than 20. So yes, this is going to be a true statement here. So, I mean, even though this looks super easy, as you start getting through this, it becomes exponentially more complicated as you look at the exercises that you'll be working on. So this is I'm just trying to get your head in the right spot here. So if you meet both of these conditions, then this is true, which this one is. But if this number were different, then you would be false. And there is no in between, by the way. It's either true or it's false. That's how Boolean expressions work. All right, there's some mini programs, divisible, an interactive program to check if a number is divisible by another, geometry, generate a number in a range, and these are asking you to do this, which I'm not going to, but these are just examples. So that's part of this. So let's get this out of the way here. So once I've done that, like I said, there's some videos for you to watch there. There's a summary that shows up here with the grading program. And this is all pretty much things that we've covered in the PDF. As you take a look at the math, again, here's all the different things that were already in that little PDF section that we looked at. So when you go to the next, it's going to evaluate the Boolean expression below to it's either true or false, given the following values of grade, name, X. Grade is assigned to 82, name is assigned to Rumpelstiltskin, and X is assigned to -3. So as you take a look at this, yeah, the first one's pretty easy. Is the grade equal to 82? True or false? Well, we don't know what grade is. Oh yeah, says it right up here. Grade assigned to 82. So grade's assigned to 82, so yeah, that's true. But when you get down to the last one here, this is the one that gets complicated. Look at all those parentheses. What in the world? So you're going to have to go through and do what's inside the parentheses first, because that's the order of operations. And if you're good at math, then you know that order of operations always comes first. So you're going to do what's inside the parentheses first, then you move on to the next thing. And this one here, not only do you have 2 different things being done here, but it's also inside of parentheses. So you've got 3 different elements here you'll have to evaluate for question number 10 here. That's kind of a tough one. So like I said, it's going to be a more challenging week for you than most weeks. All right, once we're done with that activity, it's going to ask you to make some programs. When you go to take a look at the programs here, it gives you some examples. Please enter your name. Please enter an integer. Please enter another integer, 2, or what they put in here, and 100 is divisible by 2. So this is a little program that was made, and it was made in Python, I would guess. And then they ask you to make a program in geometry and create a program called quiz. So these are 3 separate programs that they want you to make. As you go through, you might think, how in the world do I even start this? Well, you're going to have to go back and take a look at those different little chunks of code that we talked about in the videos And they show you how to make each one of these, but you have to pay really careful attention to it. When you go through and do these, make sure you're looking for the math and random functions. So that's how it's going to give you the answer. As you do these, it should be a sign in here for REPL it, but I don't see it. So I guess they just want you to do it straight from scratch, which would be weird. But that REPL.it is where you're going to go to make those programs from, and there'll be 3 of them. When you get to the next part, 4.3 AP style MC practice, we're not doing that, so you can skip over that. And you'll jump into 4.4, iteration structures. Okay, the way iteration works is each time you go through something, that's one iteration. Each day, each time the Earth, spins around, that's one iteration. If you watch NASCAR, each time the car drives around the track, that's one iteration. So in Python is saying for I in a range of 5, print hello. So if you wonder, what in the world is that going to do? Well, it's probably going to run say hello 5 times, is probably what it's going to do. And let's say they've got it here, but they don't really show it. But they do talk about the AP pseudocode saying repeating 5 times display hello. So that definitely tells me, and it should tell you too, that these 3 chunks of code do exactly the same thing. They just do it in different ways. And that's part of computer science, being able to find a different program to do it a different way. Sometimes one's easier than another, sometimes one's more appropriate than another. If you were teaching little kids, elementary students, Scratch, perfectly fine. When you get to high school and beyond, Python, and if you're just teaching someone brand new to coding, try to get them to start thinking like a computer, then the pseudocode would be the most effective. There's a range function in here that they talk about, and trying a few loops in REPL.it. That's that website. When you go to it, that's the code that you're going to run. Talking about strings or sequences of characters, they ask you to do some string methods in there. And then exercise A, repeatedly ask for a number between 1 and 100. Exit the loop once they enter a valid number. So you're going to be prompting a user. You're probably going to be using the random command to get a random integer. And then each time they put in a number, it's going to ask again until they get to whatever number it was that you put in there as the valid number, as the winner. You could do the same thing with colors. Guess your favorite color. Most people, it's blue. So that's what most people will say first. So pick something different, like red, or black, or white, or chartreuse. It's up to you. So another thing to do. Third program there, ask a user how many numbers they would like to sum. That means add together. Repeat asking them to input that many numbers and then sum the values. So you might ask a user, how many numbers do you want to add together? Well, you just might say 2. And then it's going to ask them to input each number. So it's going to enter the first number and then put the second number. And then after the second number has been put in there, then your program is going to add the values together. Now, again, you might be thinking, okay, well, God, this is really hard. I don't know how to do this. Trust me, if you don't get it, hop on the web. There's plenty of examples that show exactly how to do these simple little programs. Even though you don't have any clue how to do this, that's okay. Watch the videos, try it out. That REPL.it is where they want you doing all this, and that's what the structure that they're showing in pretty much all of these. Repeat until versus while. So it's repeat until it gets a particular statement. So they're going to show you how to do this. So don't have any panic about this, but do realize this is going to take a little more time than usual. Most of your activities have been pretty simple. You haven't really been doing too much actual code. Well, this is actual code. So as you go through this, just be patient. You got a whole week to do it, so you have plenty of time. You're going to do exercise A here, which is you're going to create a loop, and you're going to be using REPL.it to do it. So you're going to prompt the user to guess your favorite color, just like we were talking about before. So again, 3 little programs. You'll submit these, and you're going to be sending me the links, by the way. And then you're going to look at some code samples below and see if you can figure out what the code does. So tell me, what does it do? Names assigned to input. So that probably means whatever name is typed in gets assigned to the value name. While not named dot is alpha, probably alphabetized, maybe. Name is going to be assigned to input. Print the name with a capital. Sounds like that's going to take whatever name is typed in and capitalize it. What it sounds like to me. Well, what do you think about the rest? There's 4 different programs that are here for you to evaluate. So take a look and let me know what you think those do. That's what get to the last slide here. I think that's all I'm going to assign. I think it's just A and B, yes, because we're not doing the MC practice, so you can skip out of that. Data abstraction. I do want you to take a look at this, but I'm not going to actually assign the program from this. But when you go through this, when you start talking about data abstraction, notice they've got a couple of brackets here. When you have brackets there, they're talking about arrays. And an array is when you have multiple things of the same type. So in this case, you've got 3 players, Bob, Bo, and Barry. Now, what you don't have are dogs or cats or gorillas, okay? Just players. So when you have an array of something, just keep in mind that these all need to be like similar things, okay? It could be boys and girls, or it could be just girls, but it probably should just be, just keep in mind that you only have one kind of thing in an array. It's not going to be apples and oranges. It's going to be probably just apples or fruit. You could do it that way too, so that we have the same thing for the whole deal. So as you go through the abstraction rate here, again, little different than what you're used to, but I'm almost positive you're going to do just fine with this. This processing a list, boy, that looks like a ton of code, but yeah, it's a lot simpler when you do it in Python. So when we get to next here, there's processing of a list and some reflection. Yeah, I'm not going to assign this. You're not going to have to do this. But what you are going to have to do is you're going to have to do the test. And that comes after this MC practice. And another abstraction thing, which you, again, I just want you to look at. You don't have to actually run the code, but you're going to need to know how to do it in order to take the test. When you take a look at this, no functions, no modularity. When you look at this program, what do you want to do? Find the area of a circle or a rectangle. So if the answer is equal to circle, or the answer is equal to circle, notice they put this in 2 different things here. Well, don't these mean the same things? They do, but one is a capital and one doesn't. So this is how you can get around the problem of somebody typing in the correct answer but not capitalizing it. Because remember, the computer's looking for a very specific sequence of 1s and 0s. It doesn't see capitals or lowercase, it just sees 1s and 0s. So this is how you make sure that you get the correct input from the user. So they talk about having a radius here. That radius is put in. Here's the formula right here that happens. And then it outputs the area of your circle is whatever C area is. Now, when it comes to C area there, that's the circle area. So they do that a few times because there's another one here that's T area. And then there's another one that's an R area. So as you go through, you'll find out what those are. Triangle, maybe? Good question. So as you go through, again, just want you looking at these. There's some vocab, and then there is an exercise where you're supposed to pass values. I'm not assigning this exercise to you either. But when you get to, well, no, 4-6, you can take a look at. Again, not going to assign that to you. And we're next out of this. There's some MC practice, not assigning this. And then we're going to get to quiz 1. This I am assigning to you. This is available to you as well. This is going to be worth, so it says worth 7 points, but I'm actually going to make it a value of 10 points for it. And depending on how many questions you miss, which hopefully are none, then I'll adjust accordingly. But this question here, this graded quiz, is going to be worth 10 points. So when you go through this, there's a lot more in section 4 that we're not going to cover, and it's just due to time is all. So we're going to finish up unit 4 this week, and we'll jumping into unit 5 next week. So please spend your time on this, get as good as you can with this unit 4 here, and take the quiz, and see you next week.